Welcome to Comic Book Theater. I'm JR with my main man, War Dog.
What's up, JR? How's it going, brother? Today we got an awesome guest. We got Fire Guy Ryan, who has appeared on Comic Tom. And if you don't know Comic Tom, definitely go and check him out. He does a lot of cool stuff about comics. Like today I watched Comic Tom and he was talking about Thor #1 that came out. Donny Cates wrote it and he said it's fire. And it made me want to go to the store and go buy it. So hopefully they have a copy next week that I go, because anything by Donny Cates is fire. And that'll probably be something that we talk about today. Sorry to talk too much, but Ryan, I don't know anything about you, bro. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and then we can roll into the show.
Well, hey, I'm Ryan. I've been a co-host, I guess is the word, on Comic Tom pretty much since the beginning of that channel. It's been like 2 years almost now. But yeah, if you haven't seen me, it's probably because I'm not on the Hot 10 list thing that comes out every single week. That sort of content is not for me. I'll put it that way. I'm not too good at those. So you might not have seen me before because I'm on the podcast usually every week or every other week. But hi, that's me. I'm Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Fire Guy Ryan. And by the way, guys, if you don't know the Office reference there, you got to watch The Office. I mean, that was one of the first things that kind of like cemented my fandom of the channel was you guys talking some about The Office here and there and the reference of your name. And so I appreciate you joining us tonight while we're recording this. Yeah, man, let's just jump in and start talking about some of this fun stuff. We had an interesting conversation here a little while a week ago maybe about The Watchmen, and Ryan acted like he was missing out, and I'm all too happy to continue talking some about The Watchmen myself. I enjoyed it a great deal. Now this is the catch. Todd, you did your homework this week's show, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. All right, man. So
you want to know what I think, so you guys can tell me how wrong I am?
Well, as long as you're prepared to be wrong.
No, I'm cool. I'm always open to hear other people's opinions. So okay, so last show I kind of brought up that I don't believe Rorschach would support white supremacists. John made a pretty good argument that his book could have been published and down the road somebody might have taken it the wrong way. I feel like Rorschach's mask was probably more convenient than, say, maybe the comedian, who I could have seen more as the kind of white supremacist. Now, people have said that Rorschach's black or white, and to me, like, I think of it like this: like, so he likes white supremacists and he doesn't like innocent black people, or vice versa, right? To me, being a white supremacist is kind of a gray area in that argument. I actually see him more as the guy that would kind of defend the innocent people, even though he's kind of a jerk. He always seemed to he wanted to get justice for the comedian who was a total jerk, right? That was the whole movie and the whole book was him trying to get justice for the comedian, and he wasn't a good guy. He was murdered, and he wanted to figure that out. So that's one thing. Second thing.
Can I
now,
pause?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to jog my memory, where were you last week? You were only partway through the show, right? You think you watched like the first
three episodes in, because I'm 99% sure on that, because the fourth one is where to me the whole season really started to pick up, and the puzzle pieces started to fall into place a little more.
Okay.
At least for me.
I was actually on the second episode, so I got caught up. Now, look, I don't want to sound like a total hater, because the Hooded Justice episode was wonderful. One of the best episodes in that show. And I talked to John earlier. I'm a fan of Doctor Who. The end of the show kind of felt like a Doctor Who show. And then Ryan had mentioned Dr. Manhattan. And I mean, yes, Dr. Manhattan definitely did step up the game for the show to me. Although I did feel like he was kind of a little out of character. Like when that red beam, like when he comes out and he shoots everybody in the head, and then like he's standing there for like 5 seconds, and then he's like, "Oh, I'm going to be gone." And then that red beam hits him. Like to me, that was like, "What are you doing?" And I mean, it just seemed like he was committing suicide. I mean, the cool thing about the end of it was that he gave the egg and allowed her to make the choice of whether or not she wanted to be the next Dr. Manhattan. So I thought that was kind of cool. I have some other things, but if you guys want to comment on those or bring up anything else, I mean, go right ahead.
For me, I'm kind of personally, at least the way the show was marketed and the way the show started, it made it seem like the 7th Cavalry, the whole white supremacist crew, it made them seem like that was going to be more kind of central to the storyline the whole time, because like they're in it for like the first half of the show, and then it kind of shifts gears and they kind of become like sort of like a bumbling joke kind of by the end. They're kind of silly, you know, like they get duped and just kind of wiped off the board real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do agree that they did seem like they were going to be more of an actual threat. Again, to me, it holds true to the way The Watchmen was written, the original 12 issues, that you have what you believe is the threat, but the real threat is over here, and you don't really, you kind of see it a little bit, but in the back of your mind you're doubting, like there are, you know, there's ulterior motives, but you don't know that this is for sure the big bad. Okay. And it was the same way in the Watchmen book. You didn't know that Ozymandias was going to be the big bad. You kind of had inklings of it. And at the very end, you're like, oh, yeah, I should have seen that coming a million miles away. But you don't really. And I think that's one reason that I enjoy it. Now, the other thing for me is I firmly believe that the egg that Dr. Manhattan gave, I forgot her. I'm sorry.
Angela,
thank you. I'm forgetful with names, man. I just am. He gives the egg to Angela, and for crying out loud, she goes out to the pool and they stop it right before she's getting ready to walk on water. 100%. I would virtually wager any amount of money that she's not going to walk on water her first attempt. Okay, if people are expecting her foot to hit the water and her to just start walking, that's I can't see that happening in a million years.
Dude, you're
it would
not.
have been really funny.
Dude, you're not.
Fall right in the pool.
Yeah.
I know. That's exactly what I think. I think it's going to be one of those really just fall right into the pool kind of things where and then she's going to feel a great disappointment, but it's all going to lead to something more.
Did you watch any of the Star Wars movies? That doesn't happen to the female characters. I mean, come on. You know that she's not just going to walk on water. The water is going to come flying out of the pool. But there's one other thing that I wanted to mention, and I think this is an interesting thing, and maybe you guys can correct me on this. But did Dr. Manhattan ever say why he loved Angela Abar? I mean, he just, like, to me, I can't remember if he did, but he just kind of came back. He said, "I love you," for whatever reason, right? And then he commits suicide, and then he loves her so much that he commits suicide, but then passes on the power that caused him to commit suicide to her. So, I mean, did he really love her that much? I don't know.
I personally think that because of the way Dr. Manhattan is, he's a being that is seeing all types of time simultaneously. I believe that you have to kind of write him fatalistically so that he's not going to dodge every bullet. He's not going to have the answer right then and there. If you write him that way, he's not going to be a compelling character. At least not to me, he won't be. Go ahead.
For me, what makes Dr. Manhattan compelling is he seems to kind of, at least from my perspective, because I identify with him in this way, he seems to kind of be dumb and clueless when it comes to love. Like, I think that's his blind spot. Like, he had two girlfriends in the original comic, and both of them were, those were not successful relationships, and he kind of got burned by both of them, and that's sort of his like blind spot almost. You know?
Well, yeah, and he definitely was becoming, again in the original comic books, becoming less human, identifying less with the human condition. And so for sure that's accurate. Like you say, I kind of feel as though it's him having seen all of these points in time already. I also don't believe that he's dead, by the way, either. I mean, everything in me says that he's now, again, he may not renew the relationship with Angela, but I don't believe he's dead either.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he might be dead, but I mean, look, Dr. Manhattan being like omniscient and being like knowing everything is like a really great excuse. Like, I mean, you could you could use Dr. Manhattan as any excuse, right? Because he knows everything. So he knew everything that was going to happen. Like okay, so I don't recall if he told her why he loved her. So that's like my first thing. My second thing is, so Angela's fighting all these white supremacists, and she's got kids, and it's getting a little bit serious, and Dr. Manhattan lives with her. Like, wouldn't it at some point you would say, like, yo, I got Dr. Manhattan with me, let's end this right now? Wouldn't that be like more the human thing? Because I mean, Dr. Manhattan says, wait 10 years and then awake me. And then I thought it was kind of funny that they're in Vietnam, and Dr. Manhattan conveniently finds a young, attractive black guy that died of natural causes, and he became that guy. Like, sorry for bringing that up. I just thought that when you're in Vietnam, like, you would think that they would pull out the thing and it would be like all like Vietnamese guys, and she'd have to pick from that.
But you have to remember, though, too, that in that universe, the United States won the Vietnam War, and the world has become more united because of the Ozymandias attack, that psychic attack or whatever that they said was happening. So
and it was the 50th state too. So I mean, it makes sense that there would be more kind of movement in and out of that area from America.
Right. So I could definitely see that being somewhere that people who at the time maybe were feeling oppressed, maybe were feeling as though that they didn't have a place, migrating that way. And I could also definitely see in that type of setting where the government, let's be real here, the government in that setting too is much more advanced and I want to say intrusive. That's not the right word, but people have definitely given over a lot more of their liberties to the government. I could absolutely see the government being like, we'll give you a stipend to live in Korea. You know what I mean? Like, I could come up with a billion different reasons that way.
That makes sense, because I mean, it is like they just had a war there, right? So I mean, I can't see a lot of people going like, "Ooh, yeah, let's all pack up and move to this war zone." Like, it would make sense to give you some kind of like tax break or some kind of incentive to get people to move over there.
Well, first off, it wasn't Korea. You're offending our little Korean buddy over there. It was Vietnam.
It was Vietnam. I'm sorry.
But I mean, look. I watched the Man in the High Castle, right? And so like, and I don't know if you guys watched that one. Good show. And there was, Japanese were in control of one side of the U.S. and the Nazis were in control of another. And then the Japanese part, there was a lot of Japanese people, but I mean, you would think that like when they went to the morgue, and look, I'm nitpicking a little bit just because I got you guys and you're both big fans. So like, they went to the morgue and I think it was like three regular normal white guys and then this really attractive black guy that conveniently popped up, and that just kind of made me laugh a little bit. But one other thing, I'm a big I will say this: I'm a big fan of Lost, and I know Lindelof has written some of Lost, and when Angela Abar was hooked up to the elephant, that kind of felt like Lost. Yep. And so I will say, like, even though I give it a 3 out of 5, there was those moments that had me interested, and I'll probably watch number 2.
That's the reason I first fell in love with it. Was the minute those squids started coming down in that first episode, and they pull over in the car and they just turn the windshield wipers on and wait for it, and then that whole moment in particular felt very Lost, and I was on board like right then, like from then on, like I was hooked. The whole show.
I have liked see that just like that. I think that's part of the brilliance of the show as well, is it's tying in new people who they may have watched the Watchmen movie, but even then probably did not crack the graphic novel at all, even after nerds like me have been preaching at them. It's not a superhero movie. It's not a superhero graphic novel. It's one of the best novels of all time. Like The Watchmen, Mouse, and Kingdom Come are my top 3 like short arcs of stories that if people are like, I don't really want to get into the whole I just can't get into the superhero thing. I'm like, you have to check those out because they're just not. There are superheroes there involved, yes, but they're not superhero stories.
Do you guys think that there's going to be a second season?
100%. I'm a big believer in that if it's making money or if it's getting ratings, they're gonna do it.
CW is doing a second season of Batwoman. If they don't do a second season of Watchmen, I mean, that's a slap in the face. I mean, I watched Batwoman. Well, actually, the first episode wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but Watchmen was definitely better than that, I have to say.
I would say if it was on any other channel, it might be a guaranteed sure thing that we'll see season 2. But I don't know, man. Like, he originally made the thing as a one-shot like miniseries. And he's been on the record saying, like, I'm down to do a season 2 if, like, a good idea pops up. But, like, right now, I don't think there is one. I don't have one. I'm kind of set to just leave it here.
I could totally see them bringing in someone else and being like, because, again, it was successful enough. I look at all of these media, entertainment, and again, it has more to do with the exterior, the outside, the real world, than it has to do with whether or not I enjoyed the show. I just see them that there's an opportunity there to have more content, and I don't see HBO passing that up. I expect them to back the. What's that?
Especially now that Game of Thrones is done, and they don't really have like a show, like a big thing.
Exactly.
I think it would be a great big FU the way that they ended it. I mean, like now they could have just ended it flat, but they ended it with the egg thing, with her going to walk at the pool.
I disagree with that one. Oh.
I mean, like now. I mean, I'll be honest. Now I do want to see what happens with her. I do think I like Regina King. I think she did a good job acting. For me, like some of the episodes were slow. That might be what it was. Like some of the episodes were just a little bit slow, and I've watched some series where I just like The Expanse. I don't know if you watch The Expanse. If you haven't, you got it's one of the best shows ever.
Started reading the book the other day though.
But I mean, The Expanse, like every time that I watch it, I can't, I couldn't stop watching it. With The Watchmen, I could kind of stop, but I am interested to see, because one of the things that makes Dr. Manhattan is the fact that he's blue, right? So if she takes the egg, I mean, is she going to be blue? Is that going to happen?
I think he looked kind of silly in the it was the bald cap or something they had him wear. I thought it looked a little off. Something about the Dr. Manhattan look.
It made him look more egg-headed.
Right? Like
and not
Sinestro head.
Hey, look, man, I shaved my head. I know what an actual shaved head or bald head looks like. That was not it. It definitely had that like egg look to it.
You should have committed. Just shave it. Just shave it off.
Dude, it grows back unless if you're me, in which case it doesn't.
And that actor has really short hair anyway. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. It would have grown right back.
2 weeks, 3 weeks, man, and you're done. You're back. Trust me.
Yeah, if you were ever a fan of Michael Jordan, I mean, you know that he could have shaved his head and looked good. I mean, if I shaved my head, I probably wouldn't look like Bruce Willis. I'd look ridiculous, right? John pulls it off, but I've only seen John with a bald head. I mean, I've never seen him with hair, so I think that guy could have pulled it off easily.
I agree. I think he could have, but you never know. It could be, and this is going to bridge over to something else too, like Henry Cavill and the mustache that they had to do for Justice League. Yep. There could be something in a contract somewhere for a different show or a movie that said he had to keep his hair a certain length. Stupid, crazy stuff like that happens all the time that we don't know anything about because it's not in our little genre there, like the Watchmen are, or like Justice League was.
I have one other thing for you guys. I think because you're both comic book guys too. So, like, I read The Watchmen first, and first I watched the movie, and I probably watched it like 5 times. Then usually I don't read a comic. Like, usually I don't read a book if I watch the movie. Like, I watched it, and I never feel like I need to read it. I probably should because I love Stephen King. But I read The Watchmen because I felt like I had to, because it's a great book, and I'm fortunate that I read it and I watched the movie, because going into this show, Rorschach being a white supremacist, I can have kind of like an opinion on that, right? But now, if this show is canon, right? Which, I mean, that also brings up, like, DC also did stuff with The Watchmen. What is canon at this point? And you guys are comic book guys, so you might have interesting comments on that. But, I mean, if this show is canon, then and you started with the show and you go back, then I think you'd be looking for where is Rorschach a white where would you feel like Rorschach inspires a white supremacist? And like I said, to me, I never felt that about Rorschach. I felt him more like sticking up for the innocent and hating the bad guys. But I mean, how do you feel about this show, or even like what DC's doing with canon? And Ryan, I'll shoot this to you first.
As far as the canon question goes, that's going to be really interesting, because in my mind, I feel like you got to give it to Alan Moore, I guess, right? Like, who's in charge? Like, who decides what counts and what doesn't, I guess. In my head, it's canon. I haven't read all of Doomsday Clock yet, so I don't know for sure how that necessarily slots into the whole Watchmen storyline. But in my head, this feels like a very natural, like, 30-year progression. And I think with the Rorschach thing, I don't think he would be a member of the 7th Cavalry at all. I don't think he would have been down with what those guys were doing. But I do think if you take the journal that he wrote, which was not the writings of a fully sane, present, coherent person, if you take that book and put it out into the world and fast forward 30 years, I think you could see, a group like that forming around some of those ideas. It's not the most unlikely thing in the world. I do think, however, too, there is kind of a little bit of I think they were kind of using the Rorschach mask as a way to tie it to the old show. It could have just as easily been, some other white supremacist group, like non-affiliated at all with Rorschach or any of that. But that was just a way to tie it all together.
I agree with that. I agree that it's more an indication that they were choosing a symbol and not fully understanding the symbol, and that's why they chose. But there again, too, I also think it's because there were some similarities between the white mask that Rorschach used and a white hood from the Klan. There's definitely similarities there, but it's not something that I personally would be like. I believe that people do stuff like that. They bastardize what the original idea, what the original intent was. Now, one thing is, I didn't know Doomsday Clock was even finished. So if you haven't finished reading it, they are finished with that series.
Like 4 weeks
finally,
ago, the last issue finally came out. Like this,
was it like 17 years in the making or something like that? It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't read it either. I eventually will at some point. I was really bummed. This is the reason I was really bummed about it. I was really hyped up with it after the the Batman Flash crossover. And I'm like, this is going to be huge, guys. This is going to be great. That was like
2 years ago.
It was more than that, because it was almost a stinking year from the time the Button ended to the time that Doomsday Clock started. The last thing I'll say in regards to what you said about Alan Moore, unfortunately, Alan Moore will tell you it's the 12 books and that's it.
Yeah.
Those 12 books, that's it. Nothing else is canon, because he is kind of a curmudgeon from everything that and don't get me wrong. If anybody's got a reason to be that way about the comic book industry, I think he does. But on the flip side, I feel like if Stan Lee or Jack Kirby had felt that way, the way he feels about the Watchmen, if they had felt that way about their creations,
where would we be now?
there wouldn't be anything. And that would be very hard. That would be heartbreaking to me.
Well, I watched the video on Alan Moore because I didn't know about the whole history of the Watchmen and everything, and I know that he felt screwed by DC, like screwed over by DC, and then he was doing Wildcats, and then Wildcats sold to DC, or Jim Lee went to DC, and he was okay getting a check as long as it didn't say DC on it.
That's right. They had to pay. They had to pay the studio he was contracted with. And once his contract was up, he was done too. So yeah, there are a couple of those guys in comic books. And I think that's another thing that I really just love about everything about comic books. Man, there's some straight up characters that have been artists and writers for comic books from the very, very beginning of comic books. The story beyond the pages, geez, if you were writing that as a comic book, we'd all be like, it's too far-fetched. Are you kidding? That doesn't sound realistic. Really? Guy's going to go into self-imposed exile, not make any money off of his comic books, and he won't sign any of the comic book work that he's ever done, but he will hand write you a letter and send it back to you. And I'm not talking about Alan Moore on that one, but you get the point. They're just kooky dudes that have been artists and writers.
Well, Ryan, you sounded like you were possibly a Game of Thrones fan. I mean, we got the same thing with J.R.R. Martin or whatever, right? I mean, he wrote like all the stories, and then for like 5-10 years, he didn't do crap, and so they ended. So how'd you feel about the Game of Thrones ending? I'm curious because
so bad, so bad. I was extremely, 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 extremely disappointed. Like,
Yeah.
very severely disappointed.
Yeah, see, I don't. John hasn't watched it, and I do suggest watching Game of Thrones. It is a phenomenal show.
You didn't watch the show at all, or just the end?
I actually didn't watch it at all. To be honest with you, I didn't watch it at all. I'm one of these guys that periodically, if something is cultural the way that was, I just throw it in reverse and I'm like, I'm not doing that one over there. I did that with Seinfeld and Friends as well back in the day.
But you watch The Office.
But dude, how do you not watch The Office? Are you kidding me?
I haven't watched it. I watched Seinfeld.
That's just brutal. We do have a common friend. Todd and I have a common friend who just flat refuses anything office related. I had this huge tangent that I'm going off on. Every time a Dwight or a Michael meme show up, I tag him. I'm like, look, this is office related, and I'm doing it 4 times a week at least. And yeah, he yeah, I just keep needling him. I'm like, dude, if you just sit down and watch it, you'd be just fine.
You know what, Ryan? So you're a Game of Thrones fan. How would you have ended it? I mean, I think that's an interesting conversation too, because I listen to like Doomcock. I don't know if you know who Doomcock is, but he gave like his ending, and I've listened to some other YouTubers give their ending, and I'm just curious because I mean you got the books there too. So, what would have been your ideal ending? I know like the Night King was a big disappointment for me, but I mean, go ahead. I mean, if you got an idea.
Have you cracked open the books at all yet?
No, because like I said, I usually watch the show and then I don't read the books.
The Night King is not in the book at all, and I don't know if he's going to be. It's starting to feel like they made him just as a kind of antagonist for the show. The books are way more about the scheming and the manipulating and the plots and the backstabbing and stuff that goes on like down in King's Landing and all that stuff. Like there's not as much ice zombie fighting and all of that. Like you see the White Walkers like I think 3 times throughout all 5 books that are out right now. It's very, very small. But for me, I don't know. If I was in charge of that show the whole time, I would have taken it a lot slower once I realized we were running out of books. Like we're gonna finish the show before he finishes these books. Let's slow down. Let's explore this world we've built for ourselves, because at the beginning of the show, you could tell they were taking their time and setting it up and exploring all of the smaller elements. And then I think as they got closer to the end, everybody just kind of wanted to be done with it or something, because it started to just accelerate as it reached the ending, and it felt really rushed by the time the end actually got here.
Yeah, I agree. Like I got the chills when the dragon blew down the wall, right? And then I think, what was that, like the second last season? And then the last season was like, boom.
Right. And I mean, I do love that. And if you can pull yourself away from the angry nerd who's shaking his hands at the sky, like, why isn't it the way I want it to be? The last season is extremely, like, it's a spectacle. It's something else to watch. Like, there's a lot of crazy battles and action, and it's filmed very well. But what's inside there, like on the surface, it's nice and pretty and it looks cool. But when you crack the surface and get down into the inside, like you're not really doing much. Like there's the way the story ended, you could have just predicted, kind of like, oh, okay, that's it. That's how it ends. All right. I guess he's the king now.
Yeah, I feel like everything that I've heard about the show, it feels like the ending wasn't fulfilling at all. Is that basically the main complaint from most fans? Is that just what? Because I get I wouldn't have ended it that way. That happens with every nerd all the time. But I really get the feeling that it's deeper than I wouldn't have ended it that way.
I was gonna say, like, every show that I love has a controversial ending, like Lost or The Sopranos has endings that people have been talking about for 10, 15, 20 years and are upset about. And I think Game of Thrones is something different. Like even Watchmen, I would say, has an ending that's, while it's controversial, I like it. I like the conversation that it starts. But I think the ending of Game of Thrones is just, it's almost like a slap in the face to people who were fans the whole time. Like certain characters got completely shoved to the side or just killed real quick, like dispatched almost just to get them off the board. And like it felt like it was handed off to different writers, like a season or two before the end. Like it feels different.
Now, I'll say this, and again, I'm not a fan of Game of Thrones. I just never watched it.
Not
But
yet.
not yet. The Walking Dead was one that, again, it was cultural. I watched it until they killed Carl. When they killed Carl, they're on the DVR. And I've been saying this for quite a while. They're on the DVR. I just have no real motivation to watch them beforehand. And basically because Baby Judith, I have no emotional investment in her whatsoever because she's not old enough to be featured on the show very, very often. I know also in the comic book she was killed off almost directly after birth. Yeah. So it's one of those things of you just kind of, I felt like when they killed Carl, the show jumped the shark because I really did believe that there were two characters you could not kill off in the show, and it was Carl and Rick. Everybody else, fair game, including Daryl, and I know that people freak out about that, but Daryl was fair game as well. Is that a show that you ever got into? Do you have any? Are there parallels there?
I could talk for like an hour about Walking Dead because for me that's got to be one of my biggest, like, I guess disappointment is the right word. Like both the comic and the TV show, I gave up personally right after the prison in both storylines. In my head, that's the high point of the series, but I honestly gave up right there. So I mean, it could have improved afterwards. I'll give it that. I don't know, but for me, as I was reading, it was this cool story, you know, about like these people trying to survive, you know, the zombie apocalypse, and then once it hit me that Kirkman, the writer of the comic anyway, was just bringing people. It felt to me like he was just bringing people into the group, killing off some older people and shuffling the membership of the group around, moving them from one safe haven to another, letting that safe haven collapse, then moving them to another place, and then introducing some new people and killing some people there and shuffling them to another place. It just all kind of felt very repetitive after the prison fell apart and the governor went away. I thought that should have been the end of the story personally. But
See, I think that's a little bit different than Game of Thrones because Game of Thrones was very well developed for most of the seasons, and the very end of it was like just too fast, just like Ryan said. I mean, they could have did 3 more seasons and made tons of money doing it. And that's what's really the most heartbreaking thing. Like, I love Lost. I've watched Lost, I think, like 3 times already because it's been on Netflix. And the ending was not perfect, but it was okay. I mean, but it was no comparison to what the Game of Thrones was. And I totally agree with you on The Walking Dead. It just seemed like the same thing was happening over and over and over again. We're going to go here, meet a bad guy, beat him. Go here, meet a bad guy, beat him. Go, and it was really the bad guy's charisma, I think, that, like, I don't know what the Negan guy's name was, but you know, he had a certain charisma. The governor I loved. I thought he was awesome, and I liked Shane. I thought that Shane should have went off and formed his own group. And then I think it should have been like a war between Shane and Rick. I think that would have been a more compelling story. But
look, I don't disagree with any of that actually, and yeah, the more you guys talk about it, it does remind me. It started to feel formulaic in the storytelling, and you know, there's comfort in knowing virtually what's going to happen, but I know that with the comic books and it ending the way that it did, that was one of the that was one of those events where, for the first time in a long time, I really felt the '90s showing up in modern day comic book collecting, because it wasn't comic book nerds speculating on comic books. Somebody gets wind of it, it goes out into the ether, and mom at the end of the block, who's never wanted a comic book in her entire life but has watched every episode of The Walking Dead, is calling anywhere that might remotely be resembling a comic book store and saying, hey, do you have XYZ book? And so that fear of missing out shows up with the final issue of The Walking Dead, and pushed that book to the moon. $100 more in some cases. You can get that book now for like $15 on eBay, because everybody had that. It was fear of missing out tax. That's the way I look at it. And I tried to tell people from the very beginning, firstly, the print count was going to be much higher than the 2 books previously. That's proven to be true. But then secondarily, I told them, I was trying to caution people who are freaking out, because Todd will remember this from the Collector's Corner. People were on the verge of getting kicked out of the group in some cases for getting on posts of people who had picked up multiple copies and were showing them off. And people were like, hey, let me hit you up and buy one of those, because we don't allow buying in that group. We've got a separate group for that. I'm like, guys, calm down, man. Just, I get the feeling that in that case specifically, it drove the market insane. It overheated, and then just that single book crashed. Everybody who was picking up that book at $100 a pop lost their rear ends on that deal.
I just think that was a super interesting way to end your story. Like, they had put out fake reviews for like 2 or 3 issues later. Like, nobody thought that was going to be the final issue, because they had put out advertisements or whatever for like 2 or 3 issues afterwards. And, you know, everyone in their mind thinks, okay, cool, he's approaching issue 200. He's going to probably wrap it up around there. Maybe I'll pop into my store and grab the final issue, because it's issue 200. It's going to be a big deal. But then it turns out he pulls the plug and yanks the rug out from under you on like 193 or whatever that last issue actually was. I don't remember the number.
Well, I think it was like 170s, wasn't it? Like 171.
No, it was 190. I'm virtually sure it was 193. I can CLZ it real quick, but this is the thing you got to remember too with him. He's one of those cats who was really big about doing secret variants, or so he did secret variants with Oblivion Song. The other thing is Die Die Die. They sent that to LCS's free of charge, Die Die Die, the number 1, based on what their reorder was of Oblivion Song number 1, as like a thank you. And so they didn't even know they were getting it. At least that's the story that I've been told. You might double check that with Bionic Russ next time you see him. By the way, I'm trying to get that nickname to stick. Bionic Russ. Hashtag Bionic Russ, guys.
For some reason, he doesn't have a really good, catchy nickname like Golden Age Guru or Fire Guy Ryan or anything.
Yeah, I know. It's just Russ.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fire Guy Ryan, I think that works. But I think you should, for like Halloween, you should go orange on the beard and mustache and go ginger. I think that would be pretty cool.
Telling me I got to dress up like David Harbour in the Black Widow movie.
Yes. Well,
the beard.
I haven't.
This is the first time in a long time that I've been jealous of the beard game of anybody, but that's I trimmed up, and I gotta get my mane back out there at some point myself.
That's one of the perks of being a steady bachelor. You know, it doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want with my face.
My wife didn't mind. if you haven't noticed, we do tangents like crazy around here.
These are fun.
We're a couple of jerks talking comic books. That's what we are, basically, me and Todd. Anyway,
Speak for
I trimmed.
yourself.
Okay, a jerk and Todd talking comic books is fine. I trimmed my beard all off in an effort to do what we call secret shoppers with our church, and trying to trick my teenagers were in the group. It took them an hour and a half in our local mall to find me because I trimmed my beard all down, and for the first time in my life, I allowed my wife to color my beard. You see, it's basically white for the most part, except for my mustache.
Yep.
You know, all this talk about your beard, it got me thinking that Kirkman's got some really big balls for the things that he's done in this comic book with The Walking Dead. sorry to break your
Oh,
tangent.
it's okay. No,
Sorry.
it's okay. Bring it back, dude, because we need to get some more conversation going, because I still really kind of want to get to the Donny Cates thing.
Okay, well, let me just say, like, so I think that Kirkman had really, I respect the fact that he had that courage to do the things that he did. Like, he killed Glenn, and that was to me, that was a big mistake. Glenn was just, he needed to be there. He was. I wanted to see Glenn with the baby, and how we would have reacted. And so we lost Glenn. I thought that was a mistake. And then, you know, I mean, I would have liked to see Shane get broken off into another group, and then ending it the way that he did. The unfortunate thing, us being comic book fans, is when you end it like that, right, all of a sudden the comic books drop. And it's like, do I really want this? Like, you know, the first appearance of Michonne was $70, and now it's like $20, you know, because nobody cares anymore. Like, I really wish that, like, I'm glad I give him the credit for having the stones to be able to do that. As a comic book fan, I struggle a little bit with, like, crap, you just, like, killed the value of some of these books that would have been hot for a while if you would have kept a good story going.
I think Walking Dead's special, though. I mean, as much as it's not for me, I think we're probably going to see some other interpretation of it sometime down the road. I mean, whether or not this show continues on, or fizzles out and dies, I think, fast forward 5-10 years, I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of reboot. You know, like,
you know,
Walking Dead seems like it has power to me.
I'll tell you though, the crazy thing about that is, you've got Walking Dead, you've got Fear the Walking Dead. Of course, you got the Talking Deads off of that as well. I personally think that AMC, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm looking here, Newsarama released a full list of what's coming down the pipes in the next 2 years. I'm about 99% sure that I saw a different Walking Dead season. Or another spinoff, right? Another spinoff coming. Yes, The Walking Dead World Beyond, and that is slated to come out unspecified this year, is what Newsarama says. So again, this to me falls under the umbrella of they're making so dang much money doing it. There's no way they're not going to they're going to continue to do it until they're no longer.
I'm worried because I can see what's going to happen in my head. They're going to keep making things. They're going to get diminishing returns, and no one's going to care anymore. And then it's going to get canceled, and then the whole thing's just going to collapse. No one's going to care because they're going to beat it into the ground. Which, if you ask me, they already have done. But I actually kind of liked. I took a chance and watched the first season of Fear the Walking Dead, and I enjoyed it. I never carried on with it. I just watched season 1. But I kind of liked that show, even though I gave up on the main Walking Dead a long time ago.
It definitely was an interesting tangent, and an interesting way for them to go to show the actual collapse that way in Fear.
Yeah, I like seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about Donnie.
Want to talk about Donnie? Let's talk about Donnie.
Man. Donnie's awesome.
Okay, so we'll get to Donnie via a slight detour.
Mm-hmm.
if you guys don't mind, Bleeding Cool was reporting Rob Liefeld on Most Comic Books Today, Endless Talk Fest, just cackling heads. So we have recommended for forever, it seems like, if you're not following Rob Liefeld on Twitter, you should be, right up until he blocks you.
Right.
That's exactly how you should do that. And because that guy is a hoot. That guy is he's definitely opinionated. Look, I'm just gonna say it. You guys know his art is not my cup of tea. It just isn't. Now I respect him for what he did in the '90s, and he moved units in the '90s. That's what he hangs his hat on to this day, is that he moves units. And I don't think that that's disputable. There are hard numbers that say that he still sells comic books. I just think that some of the shots that he and Eric Larson were taking at modern day Image, I don't think they're justified in taking those shots. But one in the chain of tweets, there was a question asked, what do you like in modern comics? And Rob Liefeld is a Donny Cates fan. Because the only two books that he mentioned by name were Thor and Venom. What more can you say, man?
Not surprising.
I agree.
See it.
Well, I mean, Comic Tom just did a video, and Ryan's on Comic Tom, and Comic Tom did a video about Thor #1, and they were blown away by that. And I'm glad I watched it, because I'm going to go to the store. I'm definitely going to pick that one up. But yeah, I mean, Donny Cates is a stud. I mean, I fell in love with Donny Cates on the Thanos run. That was just beautiful. I mean, John and I had talked about this ties back into the Watchmen. One of the things that I really loved about the Watchmen series, John and I had talked about how Hollywood and comics kind of they talk that diversity thing, right? But then they never really follow through. And doing that Hooded Justice episode and making him a black guy, I thought that was beautiful. That made it even more special. But going back to the Thanos thing, Frank Castle becomes Cosmic Ghost Rider when you had this perfect opportunity, just like Red Hulk, where you could have made a diversity choice, and instead you go with Frank Castle. Like, for me, I would have went with Blade, because I like Blade. I mean, where did you start? Where did you jump on Donny Cates?
I got into Cates really late in the game, actually. I actually didn't get back into collecting comics until I got on this show with Tom. So that would have been early 2018. So when I jumped back into the comic world at that point, Donny Cates was already pretty big. I think he was already writing Thanos at that point. And I'm pretty weird. I'm OCD, I think. I'm not sure, but I think I am. I need to start something from the beginning. So I didn't. I missed out on Thanos until the trades came out. I missed out on Venom. I'm current on that, sort of, because I'm reading the trades. But I jumped on with Donny Cates, starting with like Guardians of the Galaxy, and he took over on that comic. I got that from #1. I went back and read a bunch of his stuff, and he's probably my. If I had, well, I have a soft spot for Brian Michael Bendis, but I think Donny Cates is also up there for me in like top tier writers right now in comics. And I'm not even a big Marvel person, really, but I really do like what he's doing. I've got my copy of Thor over there in the other room, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh,
Very
man,
cool too.
See, we could have got an exclusive review here. That Comic Tom didn't want to drop any spoilers on Thor. Those dudes were very, very careful. It's interesting that you mentioned Brian Michael Bendis, because he's always controversial. I have to agree. I never really liked Superman, and then he took over that Superman run, and I was really, really enjoying the stories. I've kind of slacked in so that I could catch up on TV shows, but Yeah, Bendis was great. And then, I mean, we've talked about Immortal Hulk. I don't know if you've gotten into that, but I mean, Al Ewing has done a phenomenal job resurrecting the Hulk. John, I mean, like, what are your thoughts on the whole Donny Cates thing, man?
Well, of course, you guys know I'm a huge Donny Cates fan. What he did to revitalize Venom. I love the fact that he pays homage to what came before him, and I want to say I have said this before in comment sections, um, just on random videos. Donny Cates is doing a really good job of weaving his story in the past, present, and future of Marvel, which means he's going to be relevant until he chooses not to be. And so he pays homage to what was happening in the 90s with Venom. You see some of these things. You get the feeling, whether he's just awesome at faking it, which I don't think he is. I think he's a legit comic book fan. But you get the feeling that he's a comic book fan and that he's actually read the stories of the characters he's writing, as opposed to being like, I will make up my own story
Canon
and
Warriors.
throw everything else away.
Can I interject real quick?
Absolutely.
Comic Tom and I actually came up with a term for that when we had a podcast a few weeks ago. We were talking about how Donny Cates is good at, like you just said, like kind of tiptoeing his way into the continuity and writing his storyline, but still kind of fitting in with what's already been established. So we were talking about Jonathan Hickman and House of X and Powers of X and what he did with the character Gold Balls.
Goldballing it.
Yes. So Tom came up with
Sorry.
the idea Gold Balls is a verb.
I just stole your thunder, man. I'm sorry, but
You're
as
good.
soon as you said gold, I'm like, I remember because I was watching the podcast and I laughed my butt off. I'm dry. Okay, wasn't watching. For everybody, I drive, so I was listening to the podcast.
Well, that's good.
Don't
watch and drive.
Hilarious, man. It was so good, and that's pretty legit too.
Apparently, our like web designer made like a T-shirt graphic for that as a joke, and we got so many comments in the video afterwards. Like, I would wear that shirt. I would wear that shirt. I would wear that shirt. So now we might actually need
gonna make a shirt.
Can I
do that.
Can I ask you? So, because I haven't seen this, and I don't know if the audience has seen this. So you brought up Jonathan Hickman, and I know like a lot of X-Men fans really love Jonathan Hickman. I mean, what were your guys' feelings on the work that he did?
I came at it from the other way. I'm actually more of a Hickman fan than I am an X-Men fan, and especially now. Yeah.
I actually am too. His run on the Fantastic Four and what he did with Franklin Richards. I'm actually a fan of Franklin Richards. Like, before Fantastic Four Annual number 6 blew up because of speculation on the Marvel Phase 4 villain, I was hunting for one of those first appearances of Franklin Richards, which happens to be in the same issue. And now I can't get a hold of a reasonable copy for under like $200, which really kind of bums me out a little bit. But on the flip side, I enjoy the way that he has written things. I think he does try to weave some into the backstory, but there is definitely it feels more like our initial interpretation of the characters that he's dealing with were all misconceptions, I guess, is kind of the best way I can think of saying it. He just puts so much of a different spin or a different slant on it that's like, I can't believe I didn't see it this way before, because he writes it so well, but it's definitely his own story.
Yeah, I needed something like different to happen with the X-Men for me to care, because they were, for the past, like, I don't even know, 10 years or something with that comic, it's just been one thing after the other with them, and it feels like every time a new writer comes on board, they create something new and just ignore everything that came before, and there's no like continuity any sense of overall like story progression, I guess, with the X-Men. And then Hickman came in and just kind of took over and said, like, this is all me now. Like, everything else is gone. We're cleaning up. Like, I'm telling the story I want to tell, and I really love what he did with the X universe right now.
Now, did Hickman overpower Franklin Richards? Because I remember watching a video like Franklin Richards is too overpowered for the Marvel universe.
He is. But again, understand, Franklin Richards is beyond Omega level mutant. As far as Franklin Richards can create, he's basically Dr. Manhattan. Is basically who he is. And Galactus ended up being a herald of Franklin Richards, okay? So, I mean, think about how overpowering that is to say that Galactus is your herald, not the other way around. But there again, it was done so well that I could see them bringing Franklin Richards in at some point to like the MCU, but it would be in like the absolute final phase of, hey guys, we're blowing it all up. We're gonna start over from scratch. He would be in phase like
7,
8, 9, yeah, 22. 100 years from now, when we're all dead and buried, and that kind of stuff. So it's again, I enjoyed his run there. I think that's where I first took notice of him, though. And yeah, I'm like you, Ryan. That honestly, I'm more of a Hickman fan than an X-Men fan. My X-Men fandom waned somewhere back in the 90s.
I feel like most people would have that reaction. For me, the X-Men run I love the most is Joss Whedon, Astonishing X-Men from like 2004, I think. That's like the most recent time I've really ever cared, I guess.
I had a friend actually gift me the initial run of New X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, and that was good. But I mean, dang man, that's 20 years ago, for crying out. Not quite.
Yeah, you're old.
Just about, yeah.
Almost as old as Todd. I am actually almost as old as Todd.
So I guess there's kind of an interesting tie between Donny Cates and Rob Liefeld. One of the things that I do respect Rob Liefeld for is now I don't know how much he was responsible for creating Cable, Deadpool. I think he was involved with Cable. I know he was involved with Deadpool. I know he takes credit for Deadpool. So him, I give him credit for that. And then, I mean, you take Donny Cates, and one of the fun things about Donny Cates is it seems like in every series he creates a new character and he gives us like a key issue. Like, so Thanos 13, we get the first appearance of Cosmic Ghost Rider, right? And then in Venom, we've got the first appearance of Eddie Brock's son, which isn't like huge now, but it's one of those keys that you want to pay attention to, right? So, I mean, what's it going to be in Thor, man? Are we going to get like something new in there? I mean, it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
And Guardians, that there was that little Groot dude, the little Groot that was like, there was specks of Groot that were like jumping.
I don't know how else to explain that. Yeah,
I don't know what his name was, but
little baby Groot.
So I'm going to give a plug for Key Collector.
Okay.
They've got a Donny Cates button, for crying out loud.
Yep, we talked about that in our new podcast we shot.
That is, hey guys, we're getting a scoop here.
Yep.
Because I think chances are very high we'll be out on like Sunday night or Monday morning.
You'll beat us.
We'll beat you guys by a few hours. So we just scooped it. But anyway, the Donny Cates button, for crying out loud, on Key Collectors, that should tell you something right there, for crying out loud. Because
actually a pretty deep category. Like, I poked around in there a lot. Like, it goes all the way back.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't want to say it's silly, but it's kind of silly. Like,
More than I would have thought that he's done.
oh yeah, absolutely.
So that brings up an interesting point. I mean, so Ryan, I mean, you're a comic book guy, and Key Collector is an awesome app. I mean, like and people have different thoughts. Like, I mean, we've talked to people that hate it. We've talked to people that love it. I love it. People that hate it seem to I think the people that hate it are usually mad because people are finding keys that they wouldn't normally find, and so they're being undermined basically. Or Key Collector, what's the other thing, John? Isn't it like Key Collector is propping things up that wouldn't normally be propped up?
The argument that I've heard from a couple of people, and I respect them. I think that they're good folks. I just think that they're wrong. And they know who they are, so I'm not going to bring up their names. We're still friends. I like those guys a lot. I just think they're wrong. They believe that Key Collector is attempting to influence the market as opposed to reporting what's happening in the market. And I've told them, I'm like, look, I'll tell you, I believe that there are some people out there that wish that they could do that, but you can't do. The market is so strong on eBay. The market's going to do what the market wants to do. Okay, there's no way. The only way really to influence the market is if you had. Let's use X-Men #1, the Jim Lee X-Men #1 from the 90s, 8 million copies sold, whatever. You would have to have the vast majority of those in order to actually influence the market. You would have to have 7.5 million of those books in your own possession to influence the market on that. You know what I'm saying? Like you really would. And that's one way where I just say the individual market on individual books, yes, can and will crash. But I don't believe the market itself overall can ever crash again because you've got eBay. eBay is that great equalizer, That's just my opinion on it. I know that Key Collector sponsors the Comic Tom channel and stuff like that. And look, Nick has been on our podcast before twice. At least he was the first guy to be on twice.
Yeah. Nick is always awesome because him and John fight to talk, and it's hilarious. I laugh my ass off every single time. But so I mean, we support Nick as well. I mean, so how do you feel about the whole Key Collector thing?
For me, my whole perspective on Key Collector, I have a weird difference. Honestly, it's like what, $2 a month? I think it's like it hits my account. I don't even notice. I'm honestly thinking like he's our sponsor. I probably shouldn't even be paying for Key Collector anyway. I don't know how that works. I don't notice. So what I notice, I pull up my phone and I get notifications for stuff that's happening like in the comic book world. Like what happened yesterday or a day before, we got a notification that like Donny Cates finished the God Country screenplay. And that's stuff that me personally, as a comic book person, as a movie person, like that's news I would like to know. But it's right there, like on my notification screen. Like I don't have to go looking for it. That's just sitting there waiting for me. For me, it's like I love it for the key alerts, like the things that pop up that tell you this issue is moving, or like there's spec on this happening because of this. I don't go out and do a whole lot of hunting or digging through back issues too. So I haven't used that element of Key Collector, like the main focus of the app. I haven't used that much. So for me, I love the key alerts and like the digging through the categories on the app and just learning stuff. There's a lot of information to learn too.
Oh yeah, there's truckloads. I've said almost since day one, you can't be a complete and total expert on the entirety of comic books. It's too huge. There's too much there. So like Todd is a new comic book day guy. Wednesdays he's rocking in there. picking up all the new titles. I love my bronze, copper. I'm starting to dabble in some Silver Age, but man, that stuff gets expensive in a hurry. And then you get into Golden Age like the Guru does, and you're like, dude, the only way I ever find any of that is it's beat to snot. And by the way, all of my stuff, I had a very brief conversation with them. I think he would consider all of the stuff that I consider Golden Age, because it's Golden Age, he would consider it Atomic Age. So that's fine. He can have his own little system of whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Over my head, I know that much.
I'm shaking my fist at him. It's okay. I'm doing it in jest.
You know what? Oh, go. No, go ahead. I have a different tangent. If you're continuing on.
No,
this
you're
tangent.
cool. Yeah, just I'll wrap it up. My portion of it up by saying, key collector is one of those things you need to have in your belt with you. You got to have something that gives you the information that you're not going to have memorized, so you can look it up. The other thing, and actually I've got a third app that I've started saying definitely you have to have, but the other one is CLZ. And by the way, CLZ, that I looked it up, Walking Dead, 193 issues. But you have to have something to let you know what you already have. If you don't have at least those two on your phone, and you do any comic book hunting at all, you're just asking to waste money, basically.
I bought like 3 copies of the same book until I realized I need to have a record of what I already own, because this is stupid.
Exactly. Now if you want 3 copies of that book, that's awesome. But Key Collector's the one that's going to tell you want 3 copies of it.
Right.
You know? So that's where I say, and you know, we have a nice deal with CLZ through our Facebook group, that you get a discount off of their subscription, which is freaking awesome. You get 33% off. That's for a $15 app.
Yeah.
That's some dollar bin diving for sure.
Of course it happens after I buy the app, but
Right? I think I already did too. It's a one-time
Hey,
thing, right?
look, man, I ain't gonna lie to you. It happened after I bought the app, because we were in admin chat and we're like, you realize that for the past 2 days, everybody's been showing off all of their CLZ, because you screen grab your CLZ count, or you're like, hey, here's my CLZ link. I've got this many books. How many do you have? It had been a good conversation piece. And next thing you stinking know, you're like, hey, you know what? We should reach out to them. We've got, at the time it was 10,000. Now we're at close to 18,000 members in the group. Maybe we could get everybody a discount. And we did. So, I'm sure it's kind of the same way as it worked with Nick and Key Collector, that we, you just got to reach out and ask, talk to the right people.
I don't know exactly how it happened with Tom and Nick, but it's got to be something simple like that. Like you just start.
I listened to the first time that Nick and Tom got on together on YouTube, and it was the Rags. Do you guys remember Rags? There's a controversy about Rags. And Nick just kind of told him how it was about some of their little fishy business practice kind of stuff with the Kickstarter. And then the guys from Rags messaged Tom, and they got on all together, and it was good. But I know that was like the first time they had talked, is my understanding. So it was neat to see that kind of start there with them.
So Ryan, I got a couple questions for you. First of all, so one of my friends, he always hits me up and he's like, what is like hot? Like, are there any first appearances or something? And so like today I responded to him. I told him like he's not a DC guy. So like Batman 86 has Mr. Teeth and the Gunsmith or something. That was their first appearance. And John and I talked about like first appearance of villains and if it's even worth it. So maybe you could comment on that. Second, because I mean you're with Comic Tom, and you talk with Comic Tom, and maybe he addressed that. Second was he's a Marvel guy, and I told him like the first appearance of Star might be something that you want to check out. She's finally got her a series. She almost looks like a generic, like a Power Girl, almost not generic, but she might be like almost better than Power Girl because she's got pants.
Okay, okay.
And then
I'm trying to find a way to mute you right now, Todd.
and then the very last thing that I have for you is, and we talked when we talked to Reggie collects, right? One of the fun things is just knowing how you got started collecting comic books. Like in my case, I grew up in Buffalo, and so like my store was like 20 minutes away, and I remember riding through the snow, like basically kicking off of snowbanks to get to the store and stuff, and riding through the rain trying to protect my comics from getting wet and everything. So like, so the first is like, what do you think about the first appearance of villains? Second would be the Star, and then just tell us like what your how you got started.
Well, the easiest one, I guess, would be to say that I don't. Let me think. I think I've read one Captain Marvel trade before. She's had so many like restarts and number ones in the past 10 years that it's hard to keep track. But like, I think I've read one of the more recent trades of her. I have very little Captain Marvel knowledge, but Star seems pretty interesting to me in the fact that they're introducing like a villain with her. I know she's got like one of the Infinity Stones or something. I'm not big on Star. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know too much about her. I mean, she looks good. I think she looks like a good character.
Should I be reading Captain Marvel then? Because that never once crossed my mind. Really, I never tried.
Yes, yeah, I don't know. Captain Marvel is that's a tough one,
Right?
that's a whole nother conversation, right?
Exactly.
I don't know if Star has staying power. I think that's my biggest question is she going to get 12 issues and then be canceled? You know what I mean? I guess it really depends on the creative team and what direction they're allowed to go. That's my personal opinion on Star.
Well, I mean, it's like I'm kicking myself because of Spider-Gwen. Like my buddy told me pick it up for like $25, and I did it, right, and I missed it, and so like so like I passed Star on to him, and I'm hoping that that's my Spider-Gwen, right?
Yeah, that would be nice to be right about something, right?
Exactly.
I called it. No big deal. Let's see.
I was right about Cosmic Ghost Rider. I just want to say that. I posted something on the Collector's Corner, and I pointed out that Thanos 13 was Cosmic Ghost Rider, and I got ripped. And my buddy jumped on and actually defended me, and I'm like, dude, just chill out, man. Let's just see how this plays out. So I was right on one thing at least.
You got to remember though, that was around the same time that they were putting the Green Goblin in Carnage and making the Red Goblin. There was a bit of that amalgam characters going on, and so people were poo-pooing it because they're like, well, it's just going to be the next Red Goblin. Who cares?
Oh,
yeah.
No, they were telling me I was stupid. Like, you're stupid. I mean, why would you want that? I'm like, Donny Cates is freaking awesome.
I like Cosmic Ghost Rider, man. I thought he was funny. But let's see. As far as like what were you saying? First appearances? Like my thoughts on them in general, or like.
Well, do you see any right now that have staying power? Like Todd is saying that he thinks Star is the next big thing. I'm not sure that I would go with Star myself personally, but I also know that there are plenty of those examples of one character going one way and another character going the opposite way.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do you know? You can't predict for sure, but if I had to pick like one thing, we've already mentioned it tonight, but like one character, at least at Marvel, who is probably going to be relevant in the near future, I would say Dylan Brock. Like, I agree. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, I like that.
Of any other. Yeah.
I actually think, though, too, in that same run, Null. I think Null I really think, and Donnie Cates doesn't miss many opportunities. I think that's another reason we all like him so much is he knocks it out of the park. It seems like every time he lifts the pen. But I think Null will make some type of appearance in this Thor run in some way, shape, or form. You know, I mean,
he does love his no.
he does. And with the history of tying it back to Thor God of Thunder, you know, with that cameo that way. So,
well, see, Null kind of brings it into my second question, which was like first appearances of villains, because John and I had talked about that before. Like, is it worthwhile to go? Because Key Collector, we talked about that as well. And Key Collector, every week that I go to the comic book shop, I look at Key Collector, and it's like, oh, it's the first appearance of a villain. First appearance of a villain. I mean, our first appearances of villains, I guess they're more riskier than first appearances of heroes. But I mean, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. It depends on the whole first appearance thing. You get really bogged down on like, oh, is there like a shadow of their arm, or oh, they didn't say anything in this issue. They said something in the next issue, so that's their actual first appearance. And like, it just gets bogged down in so many different little qualifiers like that, and sometimes it's hard to just. For me personally, I like to just sit back and wait and like, okay, there they are. Like, now I know, like they're a thing now. Like I don't personally get too bogged down in like exactly when, but it is fun. It is fun to kind of pull out the microscope, you know, and start looking backwards, figuring out exactly where they popped up.
Well, yeah. Key Collector helps with that. I mean, it shows where the first appearance is. I really think that Hulk 181 is probably the dictator of what first appearances are, right? I mean, basically, because Hulk 180 had a full picture of Wolverine, and there's a major argument about that one.
Yeah, there is.
The other
180, but that's just me.
No, I think a full page of Wolverine is pretty first appearance to me, but
yeah, I can see why 181 is cooler because it's got the fight and people want that, but it's clear to me.
Yeah, I want both of them, but so my final thing is how did you get into comics? Like, did you start young? Did you start old? What's your story?
I got in pretty old. Like, I didn't get into comics through single issues until way later. Like, I was in college, and I had a friend who gave me a couple of trades, a couple of like collected hardcovers, and he gave me the right ones because comics clicked. You know, he had a pretty good like bookshelf full of like the ones you would expect somebody to have. He had Watchmen, V for Vendetta. He had like all the Alan Moore greatest hits. He had all the good Batman one-shot, like graphic novels you're supposed to have. I read Arkham Asylum in year one, and Dark Knight Returns, all the big classic comics that year. And then when I went home after college, I got a lot of those same graphic novels from my own collection. I started building up my own graphic novel collection, but it wasn't until New 52, in a broader sense, that I went into the comic store to actually, like, on a weekly basis to get like a pull list. But I remember the specific comic book that got me to go into a comic shop, like to buy an issue, was the Red Skull villain. Like, he had an origin series that came out in like 2011 or 2010. And for some reason, that really spoke to me. I really like the Red Skull because I was reading the Ed Brubaker run at the time. So I went in and got the issues of that as it was coming out. And that was my first time going in there, getting an ongoing, like, new series that was coming out every week. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then they had, ads or whatever for the New 52 up on the wall. And I figured, like, okay, like, if I'm going in, I'm jumping in. So I went in hard on New 52. I got the Justice League, and I got the single, like, the main series for everybody that was in the Justice League. So I was getting, like, Flash, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, of course. I was, and then, from then, that was it. That's how it started for me, anyway. Very recent.
What was the weather like? My story always includes the snow, right? And riding my bike through the snow.
It is Seattle, so that never helps. I always put my stuff. I had the comic shop was right across from the mall where I worked, so I didn't have to go very far. I would just put them in my backpack and walk across the street because yeah, it's pretty much always raining. That's
Oh,
always
okay.
a factor.
Okay, yeah, I'm Atlanta. I live right down the street from where they filmed The Walking Dead. So I didn't know you were Seattle. That's cool.
Yes, sir. As far as it gets, I think, right? Like,
Where, so Comic Tom's in Seattle as well?
hmm we're both a little north of Seattle. We live like a half hour north.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm about a half hour south of Atlanta, the city, but
Close enough to be there.
oh yes, yes. You don't want to drive there though. I mean, oh my God.
I do love Atlanta, the TV show, though. I have never been to Atlanta, but I love the TV show.
Oh, the TV show's good.
Donald Glover.
There, you-
I've not watched. That's one that you got up on me. The majority of my TV consumption is nerd shows and binging stuff on Netflix. That's about the majority of my consumption right there.
I think for me, like TV and movies are my main focus, and comics are a good second place for me. My lifelong kind of obsession has been movies, television, like visual storytelling in that way, and comics are a good like kind of on paper version of that, more so than like actual novels are anyway. If that makes sense.
so are you a sci-fi fan? Like, is sci-fi your thing?
Sci-fi is a genre that I haven't really dabbled in, but I want to.
Okay.
Like I started reading the book from The Expanse, like the first book that series was based on, and I like it. I like it a lot. I'm like 3 chapters in, and I want to keep going. I didn't realize that show was on Amazon Prime though.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to find a way to watch that. Other than Amazon Prime.
I have to admit I did not complete my homework for this week there, Todd. I have not yet started The Expanse, but I will this weekend. In fact, after I get through watching The Joker for a second time that we rented, I'll pop that on the old Amazon box.
Well, first of all, I mean, do you either one of you guys got to run? Do you want to wrap this up, or can we talk a little bit more? Ryan,
I gotta be at work in a few hours, but I can talk for a little bit longer.
because you brought up the Joker. I haven't seen it, but you kind of nodded to it, Ryan, and then John's seen it.
I'll stay for that. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, let's hear some reviews, comments on the Joker.
Whew, man, okay. I hate to use the cliche. Where do you start with the Joker? Because, I mean, it's. I'll put it like this: my very first impression after completing the entirety of the movie was the violence was grossly overstated in that movie. Anybody who was complaining about the violence, or even the graphic nature of the violence, dude, go watch John Wick, for crying out loud, man.
Way worse. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no comparison in that way either. He killed, I think his direct body count was 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken.
I was gonna say like 4. I don't even remember.
Well,
No, 5. There's at least 5, maybe 6. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm given that I might have forgotten one there.
You've seen it more recently than I have.
I saw it last night and actually started rewatching it again while I was eating dinner before. Anyway, that's the very first observation that I have is that the violence was grossly overstated. As far as if you're complaining about that violence, you don't understand who the Joker is. You just don't get it. You're thinking Adam West, 60s Batman.
Flower on you, kind of.
Yeah, squirting the flower with the ha 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 stuff. No, yeah.
That's not happening.
Nope, that's not what this is. This is a film about mental disease, and is one of those things that you just like. It has to me it feels like the start of like The Killing Joke, because Arthur Fleck has like just the crappiest 2 or 3 day stretch imaginable, and he just finally snaps, man. Just finally snaps. But I think the other thing that was disturbing about the movie is I think people looked at it and thought to themselves, if I was put in that spot, I might snap too. You know, he gets the crap kicked out of him twice, just kind of for being a bit of a dingus, really. You know, he's not, he's, he's weird for sure, and the laugh was disconcerting,
Yes.
but deserving of getting his butt kicked like that, I don't. Anyway, you know what I'm saying there if you've seen
Yeah.
it. I think. Okay, I have a bad habit of whenever I notice something, I'll point it out to my wife when we're watching. So there were a couple of delusions in there that happened that I noticed, and I'm like, I don't think that's real.
Right.
I think that might be a hallucination. And honestly, I've been doing it for forever, especially with my wife because her one of her favorite movies is The Usual Suspects.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And so you see that, and I know that about her, that she likes those movies with that really killer twist ending kind of thing. And that was one thing that I noticed right off the bat. I'm like, I don't think that that's real. That doesn't seem real to me. And it turned out some of it wasn't. So that was
Actually,
interesting.
speaking of things that aren't real, the girl from Joker was in Atlanta. That's where I know her from. The girl down the hall, with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
daughter that he has
yeah.
an infatuation with.
Right.
She's the main female star in Atlanta, and she's perfection. That girl. Ooh, she's beautiful for one, but she's also hilarious. Like she's really good in Atlanta. It was a surprise to see her in Joker.
So
What?
Go ahead, Todd.
Oh, so I haven't seen Joker yet, and Ryan, you seem pretty excited when we brought it up. I mean, like what? So how many stars would you give it?
Have you
I,
seen Taxi Driver?
I think I have.
Martin Scorsese.
It's one of those that I might have seen when I was younger.
For me, going into this movie, I wanted the Joker to feel like Taxi Driver, and it did. It really did. That was my main concern, was that the movie. I was concerned that it was going to be too comic booky. I really wanted it to be what it was, which was a very in depth, almost like gross kind of look at how living like that can drive a person to become something else. You know, like how someone's circumstances and what happens to them can change the way they are, like at their core. If that makes any sort of sense. For me, I love the movie because it was. You have to. It's hard to talk about it without talking about the performance, and
Oh, you could talk to spoilers. I don't. They don't bother me.
I was gonna say it's being if people can rent it, I think we're safe with doing spoilers.
Yeah,
That's just
I'm gonna
personal
probably
opinion.
watch it tomorrow. So I can't wait to watch it.
I don't want to overhype it, but it's one of my favorite acting performances that I've seen in a very long time. Like I think Joaquin Phoenix deserves all of the credit he's getting for this movie. He just won the Golden Globe for best whatever dramatic actor. I personally don't care much about Golden Globes versus like Academy Awards per se, but I think he deserves some serious like recognition for that role from, you know, not just us like comic book people. He deserves recognition. Like Heath Ledger won the Oscar for Joker after he died, and I think Joaquin deserves similar praise for this movie too.
Now,
He had a lot more to do than Heath Ledger did too.
now I heard that some people thought that this was all a delusion from him in Arkham Asylum. So I know. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Because I mean, I don't care. I'm gonna watch it, and so if I know your thoughts, I can go in and I can watch it and have my own thoughts.
In the same way that Watchmen kind of ends ambiguous, you know, like it could be one way or the other. Like especially with the very end of the Joker movie, it leaves a lot up in the air for how you want to interpret the way it ends. So like, I could see somebody making that argument. I personally don't think that there was anything happening in that movie other than what we saw, apart from the clear delusions that he had on his own. I don't think. I think all of that stuff actually happened, right? Like I think he became the Joker throughout the course of the movie. But I also think that by the end of it, you do see what he's like in the asylum, if that makes sense. If that's where we are, because I think it ends at Arkham, right? I think that's the ending.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And well, it ends with an interview at Arkham, and he laughs as he's inhaling a cigarette, and she asks him, "What's so funny?" And he said, "I just thought of a joke." And she said, "Well, why don't you tell it to me?" And again, another puff on the cigarette, and that just sly look comes across his face, and you wouldn't get it. You know, that kind of thing. Or it's either you wouldn't get it or you wouldn't think it's funny.
You wouldn't
But
get it.
yeah. And it's one of those deals where I'll put it like this. I really started to see his facial expression became more that of the Joker as the movie went on too. He went from being a self-conscious, very, very self-conscious, withdrawn kind of person
Yeah.
to being somebody who just didn't give a crap anymore and was just going to let it all hang out the way the Joker would. And yeah, like I say, I think the main thing that people are scared of the movie is they could either see themselves or somebody down the street being that way. You know,
That's for me the biggest thing. Like you were talking about with the violence beforehand. This movie, right before it came out, it seemed like there was a lot of like everyone was on pins and needles because of obviously what happened in Aurora with the Dark Knight Rises and the movie theater shooting and all of that. Like people were concerned, considering the subject matter of this movie. And it does appear to me, at least based on my observations, I wouldn't be surprised if, while researching for this role, Joaquin Phoenix looked at certain people who have done those kind of things, because the transformation he goes through in this movie feels disturbingly, real.
I believe that I heard somewhere or that my wife told me, and she doesn't do like professional research type stuff, but she's pretty good at vetting whenever she's looking at a clickbait site or an actual site that that Joaquin Phoenix researched a laughing disease, and the actual disorder that he was trying to portray, so that he would get the authenticity of the I'm laughing, I don't want to be laughing, I'm trying to hide that I'm laughing. Kind of, he got a lot of those mannerisms, and like I say, that part of making everyone so uncomfortable. He did a really good job on it, really good.
All right, so, Ryan, you want to comment? Go ahead.
I just had like a final thought, I guess, on like in my head, like after I saw the movie, I still couldn't decide if I liked Heath Ledger or Joaquin's performance more. And I don't think, because when I got out of The Dark Knight after that movie was done, I was like, cool, that's it. Heath Ledger's the best Joker ever. And then I got out of this movie, and it's like I can see how that's like a terrific performance, but I can still in my head think of Heath Ledger as like kind of still the Joker in a way, if that makes sense. It'd be interesting to see how John feels about that. But
I can do both. I can look at them both in separate ways. Of Joaquin Phoenix, what not only was he the Joker, he was the main protagonist and antagonist in his own movie. It was all him. Whereas Heath Ledger had Christian Bale to bounce off of, and actually had a Batman to bounce off of. By the way, they definitely do shows Bruce Wayne and the Waynes. You can't be in, there's some of that going on. It just like, there's a lot to digest with the movie, and I will tell you that there very rarely do I rent a movie and squeeze 2 watches out of it before I return it, unless if I really, really enjoyed it. And like I say, finish watching it a second time that before we let it go. It was really that good. Am I going to say that it is a must see? It's close. It's close to a must see.
Well, Joaquin Phoenix he's pretty good in every movie that he does, and like I said, I probably will run to the store to the Red Box tomorrow and watch it. I know we got to wrap this up because I don't want to keep you guys too long. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I'm glad that you guys joined us.
Can I add one more thing before?
Oh, go ahead, man.
Sure,
go
sure.
ahead.
I gotta say, have you guys been? What do you think about Robert Pattinson? Right, like in the Batman. Have you watched him in anything yet?
I did not watch any of the only thing I've watched him in is the Harry Potter movie.
Right. Me
Okay.
too.
Okay. So having said that, I know that he was in the Sparkly Vampires stuff too.
Twilight.
Thank you. I knew Todd would know that. I like
Would Twilight.
You love. He's got signed copies of the DVDs and all this. Anyway. I'm sorry, couldn't help it. I am not like hugely excited about him as Batman, but I always fall back to Chris Evans being chosen to be Captain America, and at the time, Todd, you've seen Gaz post this on Facebook. One of our friends who's an artist, he's been on a couple of times too. His name is Cosmosis. Huge Captain America fan. His initial reaction was, what in the world are they letting this little dweeby twerp guy who played the human that played the Human Torch? Why are they letting him be Captain America? And now you look back on it and you're like, who the heck else would have ever been Captain America? There's only one Captain America now. So I reserve that. I'm not excited about him, but I could totally see him pulling it off and being amazing.
I watched one movie like 2 weeks ago because I had the same realization. Like Robert Pattinson, I sat down and thought about it. Like I've only ever seen him in Harry Potter, which he was in for like 10 minutes and then died. Yeah. I never saw the Twilight movies, obviously, but so I looked it up. There was one movie he did 2 years ago or 3 years ago now called Good Time. That is fantastic. Like you, I watched it. I rented it. I watched it twice, and it completely convinced me that Robert Pattinson is perfect for, like, he's a phenomenal actor, and he can do Batman. He'll be great as Batman. Watch the movie. Good Time.
I'm excited that you said that because I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm always looking for movies to watch. I thought I watched Twilight. I don't think I watched the whole series. I think I watched like the first 2. He was okay. He was okay. He was kind of weird in that one, but I think he was supposed to be. I like John. I'm kind of intrigued. I'm kind of intrigued to see how he does. I think he can pull it off.
I'm rooting for him. I'm okay. I consider myself more of a Marvel guy, even though 2 of my top 3 stories of all time are DCs.
Yeah.
I give that to folks, but I don't want anything nerd related to suck. I just don't. I'm not that big of a fanboy where I'm like, Marvel is the best and I hope DC sucks for all of time and eternity. No, when Shazam was good, I'm glad Shazam was good. When Aquaman was good, I'm glad Aquaman was good. Just give me more nerd content to consume. Honestly, that would be my final thought on the whole thing.
Agreed.
Just give me more good nerd content.
All right, well, let's get some final thoughts here then. All right, first, let me go first because first of all, I really didn't love this Star Wars saga, and so and I blame it on the top people at Lucasfilms, and so I'm kind of content that it wasn't as good as it could have been. But The Mandalorian is awesome. And I like Jon Favreau as the director of Iron Man. I thought that was an awesome movie. I like him with The Mandalorian. And I'm praying that going forward, Jon Favreau has a lot to do with it. Second thing is, I haven't seen the Joker movie, but it really, one of the interesting thoughts that had popped into my head, and I don't want to start a whole nother conversation. All you guys got to do is just tell me like one name. Like, so they did this for the Joker. Is there another Batman character that you would imagine? Like, for me, it would be like Mr. Freeze. Like, could we get like a Joker movie for Mr. Freeze? I think that would be cool, like in a different context. And I mean, I think that's my final thoughts. I will pass it on to you guys.
Ryan, I'll let you go next, man, because I've got an interesting. I'm trying to germinate an idea on who the next Batman villain I would like to see have a solo movie.
I would have to say Two-Face. I want to see like a. I really don't think that we've gotten a cool enough look at like the real organized crime elements of Gotham City. Like the first Batman Begins, it had like there was a lot of Falcone, crime family happenings going on in the background, but it was a Batman movie, right? I think it'd be kind of cool to see like the rise of a real capable like gangster in Gotham City. I think that would be really cool for me. I love gangster movies, so I would be all over that.
I can dig that. I think that I would lean towards Poison Ivy. I think she is criminally underused for the most part. Like, I don't mind the Harley and Ivy storyline that they've got going on. It kind of bums me out, though, that she is playing second fiddle to Harley as opposed to being a main character. That's just my personal opinion on that. So,
okay, well, Ryan, we are so grateful that you joined us. This was a fun conversation. I didn't want it to end. I still don't want it to end, but I know you got to go to work, and John is past his bedtime.
I'm going to sleep.
I mean, Joker-wise, I still love Cesar Romero. I mean, I got to consider him in the conversation just because he was fun and interesting.
There are three Jokers. There are three Jokers in continuity, so.
Well, I mean, Jack was good too. I mean, the Joker's usually good. I haven't seen Suicide Squad, so I can't really comment on Jared Leto. You guys could just make a smirking face or give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. But we'll wrap this one up. All right, guys.
Be good or be good at it, guys.
Peace out, everybody.
Speak responsibly.